Today, I will be addressing an ethical dilemma which revolves around Lani's father requesting access to Lani's therapy records. A necessary theme presented within this case is that of who is the client, as it seeks to provide the basis for responsibility of roles for which a psychologist can uphold. This theme also will be necessary in determining who within this case has legal authority. Subsequently, this suggests that psychologists who work with children instead have an ethical responsibility to a multitude of parties, particularly in the case of a non-mature minor. This highlights the complex ethical web faced by psychologists working with children and how, although there may only be a single client, there is an assumed ethical responsibility to an array of differing parties. This, however, is not represented thoroughly within the Australian Psychological Society's Code of Ethics, wherein a client is defined as a party or parties that are commissioning or paying for a psychological service. In such case, Lani's mother is the client, as she is paying for the service, receiving the benefits of a client such as confidentiality alongside Lani, who is receiving the service. This leaves out Lani's father, who is not restricted by a court order and is assumed to have the same parental rights as Lani's mother under the Family Act. As a result, the ethical dilemma consists of the conflict between Lani and her mother's rights of confidentiality in 8.5, and Lani's father's parental and legal rights as a father in 8.2.1. Stage 2. In reflection of my own personal values and in the interest of an awareness of possible value traps, I will list possible rigid mindsets that may influence my decision-making. Firstly, although I do not consider myself religious, I was raised in a Catholic household and thus maintain influence from its morality, particularly around family. As a result, this may lead me to a rigid thinking pattern around family, which may make salient the possibility of reunification between parents. This is problematic as it does not consider either parent as an autonomous being, rather it prefers the reunification of the family unit to aid Lani's issues. Secondly, my appreciation for justice could provide a potential issue in terms of maintaining the father's rights as a parent due to his unjust parenting techniques that he has used on Lani. I can see myself having difficulties dealing with him as a person. Stage 3. In such ethical dilemma, it is an essential aspect to be aware of the rights and responsibilities endowed upon individuals within this situation. Firstly, Lani, as a non-mature client, still has a right as far as APS Code of Ethics is concerned. Specifically, 8.3.6 refers to clients whose capacity for consent is limited, and as such, consent must be gathered from a legal authority, although a psychologist should still strive to attain consent from the client as far as possible. Lani's mother is the chosen legal authority in this case. She therefore has the right of a client according to the Code of Ethics, where the definition is extended to those paying for psychological treatment. Thus, Lani's mother must be included in consent gathering process for Lani's treatment, as she's considered to have the same rights as Lani. As Lani's father is not the chosen legal authority, according to the Code of Ethics 8.3.6, he does not have the same rights as a client. However, despite the divorce between Lani's mother and father, they still share equal parenting rights and do not currently have a court order relevant. More specifically, Lani's parents are bound to the equal shared parental responsibility under the Family Act, where both parents have an equal responsibility in deciding major decisions, i.e. where to go to school, or in this case, major health decisions. Lani's father also benefits from 8.2.1, in which a psychologist cannot disrespect his rights, including his parental rights, which are considered to be equal as stated above. Therefore, there exists a specific conflict whereby Lani's mother is the legal authority over Lani while sharing parental rights with her father, who ideally, legally speaking, is also to be involved in Lani's medical treatment. As a psychologist in this case, it is important to recognize the responsibilities I am bound to according to the APS and federal law. Primarily, as stated by the APS Code of Ethics 2007, if there is a conflict between legal and ethical codes, legal codes take priority. As such, I am bound to uphold the Family Act, which delineates shared parental responsibility. Furthermore, I must also pay relevance to the Privacy Act while considering my responsibilities. The Privacy Act describes how, in addition to shared responsibilities of medical decisions between parents, parents also reserve the right to access their child's health records unless stated otherwise in a court order. Consequently, Lani's father has legal precedent to access Lani's records, including anything Lani's mother has informed me that pertains to her daughter's therapy. Another key responsibility of a psychologist in this case is to have accurate case notes. This will have ethical implications within this case, as case notes cannot be edited by the psychologist to suit the client's wishes in this case, as stated in the APS Code of Ethics. Therefore, anything disclosed to me by either Lani or Lani's mother that is relevant to the therapeutic process must be represented within the case notes and thus ultimately disclosed to Lani's father. Moreover, the APS Code of Ethics 8.7.2 states that psychologists must gain consent from the client's representative as well as the client as far as possible in the process of providing client information to an associated party. Therefore, in the process of providing Lani's case notes to her father, I should also attempt to gain informed consent from Lani and Lani's mother. However, in this case, if the consent is withheld, I would still need to uphold my legal responsibilities to provide the case notes. Hence, there exists a clear conflict between the APS's ethical standards and my legal obligations, which I will discuss in the next sections. Decision 1. I will begin by attempting to gain consent from Lani and Lani's mother to send information to Lani's father as described in Code of Ethics 3.6. Given that informed consent is provided, I will send Lani's father the information as requested. Decision 2. In this case, I will provide Lani's father with the information in a timely manner. Subsequently, I will inform both Lani and her mother of this development and discuss the implication and the rights of Lani's father as a parent according to law. Stage 5. Decision 1. This decision centers upon upholding ethical standards without exposing myself to a significant legal implication. As such, gaining informed consent from both Lani and her mother prior to disclosing information to her father will have the major benefit of attempting to maintain a therapeutic relationship. This is consistent with Hare, Hazen, and Nielsen, who describe the importance of balancing multiple parties involved in the therapeutic process. This is particularly relevant in regard to consent and confidentiality, as a psychologist must exercise careful consideration of the conflicting interests of multiple parties. Therefore, in gaining the consent of Lani and Lani's mother prior to providing the information to her father, I will have attempted to balance the negative ethical and legal risks within this case. According to Sori and Heckler, I should strive to discuss the use of a range of techniques such as roleplay and brainstorming with both Lani and her mother to assist them in providing consent. Although I will strive to persuade Lani and Lani's mother to provide consent, there is still no guarantee of this outcome, and as a result, there is a substantial risk in pursuing this decision, as even without the consent, I am still bound by the law to provide the information. A disclosure without consent will likely damage a therapeutic relationship and endanger future progress. This decision may discourage future attendance as well as minimize client disclosure, as the client may not feel safe to share information and thus prevent Lani from achieving ethical benefits. Decision 2. The rationale behind Decision 2 is linked to Duncan, Hall, and Knowles, who described a non-binary perception of confidentiality and ethics in general. Specifically, viewing this ethical decision as a do or do not decision may limit my spectrum of decisions. Viewing the decision through this lens enables me to attend to my legal responsibilities whilst pursuing ethical responsibilities in a more flexible way. Thus, a key positive consequence of this decision is the preservation of legal responsibilities as the priority. However, the decision has considerably less ethical merit than the opposing decision, as it does not achieve consent prior to disclosure. Moreover, a likely unanticipated positive outcome of this decision is that it opens up the potential for a new therapeutic intervention. This is posed in Ellis's article, whereby she argues that therapists should strive not to appoint a designated legal authority without a joint examination of what this entails, particularly in separated relationships. She continues by suggesting that psychologists should view the whole family system as a client, particularly in the case where there is no documentation stating otherwise. This framework thus produces a new lens in future therapeutic processes with Lani. Therefore, this decision also has the potential to involve the father within the therapeutic process, even if to a limited degree, whilst simultaneously respecting his legal rights as a father. Stage 6. I have decided to go with Decision 2, as laid out previously. As such, I will provide information to Lani's father as requested. I will then inform Lani and her mother that whether Lani's father is a participant or not, he is entitled to access Lani's medical information. Moreover, I will ensure to inform Lani and her mother that if he objects to treatment, I will have to cease treatment until there is an agreement or legal document that states otherwise. Following this, I will continue to provide therapy as before. This decision provided less risk compared to the former, as I was unsure whether Lani and her mother would consent to the information being shared, rather than risk that scenario. Being able to provide an explanation as to why I gave the legal documents seemed to be an acceptable ethical compromise that does not present any legal risk. And those are my references.